Good evening and welcome to the February 20th, 2018 regular meeting of Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to invite young Sophia Ramirez to the podium. If everyone could please rise as Sophia leads us in the pledge. Perfect. Whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job, Sophia. Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda is reflection. I wanted to ask for your indulgence for just a minute. Because there are three items I wanted to bring up, and unfortunately all of them are melancholy. First, we mourn the loss of one of our longtime nonprofit partners, Miriam Gandel, who was the director of the Dwelling Place and a city partner for more than 18 years. For those interested, services will be held for Miriam tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. at the Garden of Remembrance in Clarksburg. I just came from a candlelight vigil for a young high school student Tyler Terry, a 17-year-old from Quince Orchard High School, who tragically passed away last week after complications from a previously undetected heart condition. And it's an amazing show of support at the high school this evening. For those interested, services for Tyler will be held on Friday, February 23rd, 11 a.m. at the Denominational Church of God. And of course, like everybody, our hearts ache for the victims, fellow students, teachers, staff, families, and the entire community of Parkland, Florida. This type of horrific tragedy could happen anywhere, and while we thank our lucky stars every time when these things are not happening, when it doesn't happen here, it still hurts. And as elected officials, it's not lost on us that certain laws and public policies could possibly have prevented this incident, whether it's a series of additional restrictions on assault weapons and or enhancements to our mental health care infrastructure and or increased sharing of information between agencies, as this shooter was actually well known within the local mental health community. We hope that elected officials at all levels will push aside the politics, take a serious-minded look at where we can make effective, meaningful change and take action. So with that, with those families and Tyler and Miriam on our mind, let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the approval of minutes.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, wait till Councilmember Harris joins us at the dais. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight. It's the minutes from the January 2nd, 2018 meeting. What is the pleasure of the council?
Move approval of the minutes from January 2nd, 2018.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, we're going a little out of order here because, well, for a lot of reasons we don't need to get into, but we have scheduled tonight on our agenda staff guidance for the potential wild animals ordinance, and because of council absences, one particular council absence, it's fewer than I expected, but I and staff are recommending that the council take a vote to defer this to the March 5th meeting.
So moved.
We have a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
But we'll still take testimony, Mr.
Yeah,
from.
that's my
Okay.
part. I get to say
Making
that.
sure. We were
So are
asking
you
to
voting
vote-
aye or no? Or nay?
On that contingency, then, for that representation, aye.
Okay. So that carries 4-0. We are deferring to March 5th, as what Rob is trying to get across is that anybody who came here to speak on this issue can still speak on this issue during our public comments piece, as I mentioned before the meeting. When we get to that agenda item, I'll let you know. And otherwise, if and when we introduce an ordinance, there will be a public hearing. There will be ample time to provide comments on this. So we will move on to appointments. And just pull this up. We have several reappointments tonight. What is the pleasure of the council?
I'm trying to get to that page. All right.
I'll show you. You gotta open that arrow. The one that's facing this way. That one. Now click on it.
It's this There new we system, go. it's still
Yeah.
new system. All right, I'm going to move a resolution of the council confirming reappointments made by the mayor to the Economic and Business Development Committee and the Multicultural Affairs Committee. To the Economic and Business Development Committee, 3-year terms to Jeffrey Hines, John Lynn, Matthew Markowitz, and Eric Morrison. All of those terms to expire in January 2021. And a reappointment to the Multicultural Affairs Committee, a 2-year term to Kenneth Weiss, his term to expire in January 2020.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have our one presentation for this evening. I'd like Chief Soroka to join me at the podium. Oh, that's a good point. Is anybody here whose name we just called as appointment to one of our committees? Okay, we will thank them when we see them. Thank you, Doris.
Good evening. A career as a police officer is more than a job. It is a calling to a life of sincerity, service, and sacrifice. To become a successful police officer, one must possess a true desire to help others, no matter what the cost. Nowhere is that desire more evident than within the ranks of the Gaithersburg Police Department. I want to thank the family and friends of Lieutenant Sean Eastman, Sergeant Shane Eastman, and Corporal Marlon Ramirez that are here tonight for your support that has enabled them to advance in their careers. They did not get here alone, as you are the ones that have been there for them in the good times as well as the bad. You have shown patience and understanding when they miss family events as a result of having to work. They will need your continued support now that they have each attained positions of greater responsibility. Promotional competitiveness is contingent upon job knowledge, education, training, experience, and performance. Each of the officers desiring promotion to the rank of corporal and sergeant participated in a 5-month competitive promotional process that consisted of a written exam, a structured resume outlining their work history, education, training, and if applicable, military experience, along with an oral interview consisting of 5 operational scenario-based questions. The resumes and oral interviews were scored by outside assessors from Maryland municipal police agencies to ensure objectivity and impartiality. This resulted in a rank-ordered eligibility list. The one promotion to the rank of lieutenant consisted of a resume submission similar to that of the corporals and sergeants, and an oral interview by 5 sergeants in the department desiring a promotional opportunity. These officers excelled through the comprehensive promotional process. I commend the newly promoted officers for their commitment to ensuring public safety, and I am confident that they will fully embrace their new leadership positions by influencing and motivating those supervised relative to the quantity and quality of their work. An achievement such as theirs comes with more than studying the criminal laws, motor vehicle laws, department general orders, and city ordinances. Their tenure, job experience, and more importantly, motivation and support from home has put them in a position to make more of an impact in the police department and this community. Congratulations on your accomplishments in achieving positions of greater responsibility. As you move up higher in rank, you must work longer and harder, as you are not only responsible for yourselves, but also to the men and women that you have been entrusted to lead. I will call the name of each officer and the name of the family member pinned in the badge. When I call your name, please come forward. Promoted to the rank of corporal is Corporal Marlon Ramirez, and his daughters Sophia and Isabella will pin on his badge. Isabella.
Ladies, come here. Come here. Smile for the camera.
She's determined.
Yes. Well done.
Promoted to the rank of sergeant is Shane Eastman, and pinned on his badge is his brother Sean.
You want a picture first, guys? You guys come in the middle. We got people coming around the side. You're important, guys.
So that way we can photobomb this guy.
All right, promoted to the rank. And finally, promoted to rank of Lieutenant Sean Eastman, and pinned on his badge is his brother Shane.
This worked out.
That's good, guys.
The next awards that will be presented is the 2017 Officer of the Year, which will be followed by the Supervisor of the Year awards. Recognizing officers for exemplary performance is one of the most enjoyable things I do because of the hard work, personal sacrifices, and commitment it takes to achieve such recognition. Success is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from one's mistakes. Although the police department has 13 different formal awards, I believe that these two awards are the most prestigious because an officer must sustain outstanding performance over an entire year, as opposed to many of the other awards which may be received for a single act. The award recipients each have in common a strong commitment to doing their very best and striving to constantly improve themselves and other department members. They have a commitment to being the very best they can be, and they motivate the other people around them. They know that teamwork is the foundation for the success of the department. Each year, there's an alarming number of documented drunk driving fatalities across the country. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 10,497 people were killed nationwide as a result of drunk driving collisions in 2016 alone. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund has recorded 131 police officers killed in the line of duty as a result of alcohol-related offenses since 2007. In comparison to previous years, 1982 through 2017, drunk driving fatalities across the country have decreased by 51%. This statistic is a positive indicator of the gains being made to fight drunk driving. Without a doubt, this gain is in part the result of hardworking officers with an excellent work ethic and dedication to doing police work. Officer Kevin Story is one of those officers. Officer Story's work ethic and relentless drive is unmatched and unparalleled. His exceptional high quality and quantity of work was performed consistently, day in and day out, throughout the year, and has clearly exceeded the requirements and expectations for a patrol officer. Equally impressive is Officer Story's efforts were accomplished while he maintained his normal patrol duties and responsibilities. Officer Story's other collateral duties include being a field training officer and a member of the Montgomery County Police Special Event Response Team. Officer Story led the department in DUI enforcement by averaging 11 DUI arrests a month in 2017, and he ended the year with 126 DUI arrests. On several occasions, people arrested by Officer Story thanked him for treating them with respect and for making a positive change in their lives. This alone speaks volumes of Officer Story's professionalism and his representation of the department. Officer Story's efforts in DUI enforcement have saved countless lives. Officer Story's focus on criminal activity is above and beyond his routine duties. On several occasions, Officer Story observed serious traffic offenses while commuting home in an off-duty capacity and took appropriate action. Through his coordination with the agencies of those jurisdictions, he facilitated stops that have led to drug and DUI arrests that took dangerous drivers off the roads. Officer Story is a well-rounded officer and can easily shift his DUI focus to drug enforcement. In 2017, Officer Story made 34 drug arrests or placed charges. One arrest led to the seizure of $2,975 in distribution amounts of cocaine. In addition to the DUI arrests, Officer Story was responsible for 4 felony arrests, 25 misdemeanor arrests, 12 criminal citations, 23 self-initiated criminal arrests. He handled 429 primary calls for service and wrote 861 traffic citations and 565 warnings. In addition, he wrote 207 reports and authored 6 warrants. Of particular importance is that Officer Story had over 1,800 citizen contacts, which did not result in a single citizen's complaint. This exemplifies his professional and courteous conduct. For his outstanding commitment to duty, professionalism, and contributions to the citizens of the city of Gaithersburg and to the police department, I am proud to bestow and distinguish Officer Kevin Story as the Gaithersburg Police Department's 2017 Officer of the Year. Kevin.
We don't have Rob in the pictures. There we go, thanks.
All right. The final award is the Supervisor of the Year. During 2017, Corporal Wade Karen was instrumental in the supervision of the Operations Bureau Patrol Shift 4 while maintaining a professional and empathetic relationship with all of the officers. Corporal Karen demonstrated exemplary performance while leading Shift 4, and he provided active supervision that inspired motivation, outstanding shift performance, and ensured constitutional policing. Corporal Karen went above the normal corporal duties expected within the police department. He led all corporals in the Operations Bureau statistically, and he also had the most adult felony arrests, reports written, primary calls handled, and warrants obtained. Corporal Karen is an active and positive leader in the field for Shift 4, as noted by 2 Officer of the Month special recognitions. Also noted was his contributions to our field training program. When the department has a new officer that needs extra assistance, Corporal Karen has consistently stepped up to assist. In 2017, Corporal Karen volunteered to assist with the new officer in field training that needed additional training and support. Corporal Karen field trained for 90 hours, consisting of approximately 40% of the FTO hours of all corporals. Corporal Karen has consistently been one of the go-to FTOs when the department has a challenging trainee. He is not only willing and able to demonstrate and encourage the trainee to expand their capabilities, but he does so in a manner that builds self-confidence. He has the respect of fellow officers and quickly develops that trust with the trainees. What makes Corporal Karen essential in these situations is his commitment to making the right decision. He is a leader that motivates officers and holds them accountable with coaching, mentoring, and teaching techniques. Corporal Karen has been recognized repeatedly for his commitment to the department and his response to incidents by supervisors and officers in the department, allied law enforcement agencies, members of other city departments, and residents of the city of Gaithersburg. Corporal Karen exhibited the department's core values of service, integrity, and respect on a daily basis and set the example for leadership in the department. It is with great pleasure to present Corporal Wade Karen with the department's 2017 Supervisor of the Year. We're going to have a reception immediately following this, so all of the officers, their family members and friends are invited to attend. We're going to have it back at the station, so if you would like to join us, please feel free to do so. Thank you. Thank you.
For those of you standing, I think some space is going to clear out in a minute. Okay. We're just going to let the room clear out a little bit. Next, we have our public hearing on the historic preservation element of our master plan. We'll just sort of give this a minute to... Welcome. As the room clears, we're expecting Rob Robinson and Chris Berger to lead us.
No, actually, my fever is broken by the time I went to one. I've had this last Tuesday night.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members and planning commissioners. This is the joint public hearing on the 2018 Master Plan Amendment MP 117, Historic Preservation. The State Land Use Article Division 1, Section 3102B1, Elements, Municipal Corporations, permits the city to include additional plan elements such as historic preservation. On December 1st, 2017, staff released the draft element for the required 60-day public comment period. This hearing was duly advertised in the Washington Post on February 1st and February 8th of 2018 and posted to the city's website. At the present time, there are 27 exhibits in the record file. The individual exhibits may be reviewed either online on the city's master plan webpage or at City Hall during regular business hours. Any objections to any exhibits should be noted prior to the closing of the record. Otherwise, they will be deemed received into evidence. So to begin, this is an update to the 2003 historic preservation element, and as with all master plans, the recommendations made in that element carry forward unless amended in the current draft. This is the first element of the 2018 update. Also to be included is Parks and Recreation, Land Use, and Transportation. As with all master plans, this one reflects the 12 state planning visions and city goals, and was developed following a number of work sessions conducted with both the Planning Commission and the Historic District Commission. As you can see here, we sent notifications to various state agencies, including Maryland Historic Trust, regional stakeholders, including Montgomery Planning and Montgomery Preservation, Inc., and every property identified in the element, which tabulated to 769 mailings that went out. So if you were in a neighborhood that was identified in the element, you received notification of the public hearing. This is slightly different than what you received in your packet. So as of today's date, there were 14 questions and comments that have been received into the record. We received 2 comments, including the combined Maryland Department of Planning and Maryland Historic Trust comments, following when we originally posted this presentation to the Council and Planning Commission packets. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Historic Preservation Planner, Chris Berger, to actually present the draft document.
Good evening. I'll now briefly go through the document. The element is broken up into 6 chapters, plus a bibliography and 2 appendices. First, the overview chapter summarizes the element, and it boils down to these 3 points. Historic preservation seeks to achieve the 3 areas of sustainability. Preservation helps boost the city's well-being. And there is acknowledgement that we can't always freeze buildings in time. They must be able to evolve. Also note that each graphic or photo you see in tonight's presentation relates to a corresponding section of the element. So for example, this Venn diagram is located in the overview chapter. Chapter 2 is the introduction. We discuss the challenges and opportunities facing historic preservation before we move on to the role of the element, which is to act as the guiding document for the city to utilize in planning for its future while still maintaining remnants from the past. We also detail how the element is used and how it functions as a guide for various city boards, business owners, property owners, and the general public. The introduction also includes a graphic that shows the 6 areas of the city's preservation program: advocacy, administration, identification, management, incentives and benefits, and education. We then go into greater detail about what comprises each area, but included here are a basic definition of each. Again, the 6 areas are advocacy, administration, identification, management, incentives and benefits, and education. Chapter 3 is a history of development in the city with an emphasis on annexations and cornerstone development projects. The history is divided into 6 eras. We have a graphic with a timeline on page 84 of the agenda packet and page 18 of the element that shows how each era fits within the broader context. The first era goes up to 1873, the year the B&O Railroad track was laid through the city. The next era goes from arrival of the railroad to the end of World War I. Mills were built along the railroad tracks at that time, and the first planned residential developments were created. Next, from after World War I to the end of World War II, this is when Asbury was established and more residential developments were constructed. From after World War II to 1969 was a period of tremendous growth in the city and surrounding areas, as what is now known as the National Institute of Standards and Technology relocated to the area, and housing development, shopping centers, churches, and corporations followed in NIST's wake. And the NIST effect continued in the 1970s when the Lake Forest Mall opened. Finally, from 1980 to the present, we've seen a number of large-scale mixed-use developments as well as the Metamine complex. Moving to Chapter 4, I understand it's difficult to read this chart, so you can find it on page 95 of your packet and page 29 of the document. It lists the historic resources that were designated by the city at the time of the adoption of the 2003 preservation element. Pages 96 through 101 of your packet and pages 30 through 35 of the element are maps that show where these resources are located. Since adoption of that 2003 element, 8 resources have been historically designated by the city. The first 4 photographed here clockwise from top left are the Crown Farmhouse, the Severance House, Kentland's Firehouse, and the Kentland's Carriage House. Continuing again clockwise from top left, we have the Kentland's Mansion, the brick building now occupied by DPZ, and the Kentland's Green, which includes the dog and cat building. And also we have the Arts Barn in the lower right corner. Maps of the 8 most recently designated historic resources are located on pages 104 and 105 of your packet, and pages 38 and 39 of the element. In addition to the designated historic resources, we have 3 courtesy review areas in the city. In these areas, any site plan amendment requiring Planning Commission review must first undergo a courtesy review by the Historic District Commission. The HDC provides comments as to the compatibility of the proposal within the context of its surroundings. First, Old Town is a courtesy review area, as is Observatory Heights and Realty Park. We include this map as well as tables on pages 109 and 110 of your packet and pages 43 and 44 of the element that list older resources that have architectural and historic significance and have retained a great deal of integrity. It's staff's position that these properties should receive special consideration in any redevelopment projects. It should be noted that almost all the potential historic resources were noted as such in the 2003 preservation element. Also in this chapter, we have tables and the following maps on pages 111 through 115 of your packet and pages 45 through 49 of the element of other resources of note. To quote from the element in regard to the other resources of note, the list is intended to identify potential resources that may have historic significance and require additional consideration in any redevelopment projects. It continues, most of the properties lack detailed information, so the 2003 element suggests that thorough research be conducted prior to demolition or significant alteration. Again, most of the other resources of note were previously listed in the 2003 preservation element. And I'll go through a few of the maps. And this is the other neighborhoods of note. You may be surprised to see the Kentlands and Saybrook on this map. We're not recommending that they should be historically designated right now, but we are pointing out that they are significant to the city's history and exhibit qualities that may make them eligible for designation in the future. Deer Park is also included on this map of other neighborhoods of note, and residents in that neighborhood receive notification postcards as a result. Subsequently, a number of Deer Park residents questioned its inclusion in the element. Again, we're not proposing designation of all or even some of that neighborhood, but we are noting that it does deserve recognition for its role in Gaithersburg's development history and may have historic significance. Chapter 5 addresses how historic preservation supports each of the 3 areas of sustainability. First, in the area of environmental sustainability. Reuse of older communities leads to less landfill waste. The location of older communities close to downtowns and along established transportation routes reduces fuel usage and encourages more environmentally friendly forms of mobility, such as walking, biking, and mass transit. The diagram on this slide demonstrates the stack effect, one of the many sustainable design features characteristic of older buildings that encourages heating in the winter and cooling in the summer, all without the use of electricity. Older buildings are often made of durable materials such as brick, plaster, and dense wood. The element references a study that concluded it takes as many 80 years for an energy-efficient new building to overcome the negative impacts to the environment created by its construction. Similarly, wood windows are often replaced in favor of newer windows and their perceived energy savings. But study after study has found that the energy savings of a new window is often minimal when compared to retaining the original wood one. And old-growth wood windows can be repaired indefinitely, unlike modern vinyl or metal windows that often cannot be fixed and typically have a lifespan of just a few decades. Older commercial buildings often have lower rents than newer buildings, so the older buildings are more likely to foster startup businesses and provide the businesses with an opportunity to grow and create jobs. Along those lines, countless long-suffering traditional downtowns have been embraced in recent decades as catalysts for redevelopment as part of the Main Street America program. And when these main streets are in active use, the businesses contained within have been found to be more resilient to market shifts due to the unique retail experiences they offer. A number of studies of historic districts from across the state and country have found that the value of properties in districts appreciate equal to and oftentimes higher than non-designated properties. Last year, staff conducted its own study of historic district home values and concluded that the property values of homes located within the city's 2 historic districts was similar and sometimes higher than the values of properties in comparable older neighborhoods that were not historic districts. That report is contained in Appendix B. Historic tax credits create jobs and encourage private investment. A Maryland study found that for every $1 in historic tax credits led to a return of $8.53. Heritage tourism is the travel to places and participation in activities that recall the past. In Maryland, heritage tourists spend on average 40% more per household than other visitors to the state. Adaptive reuse is when a building is retrofitted for a new purpose. In Gaithersburg, the Thomas Cannery, which is pictured on this slide, is an example of a former industrial space that has been repurposed into commercial and office space while maintaining much of its historic appearance. In terms of social sustainability, older developments are often compact and walkable, providing an environment for impromptu mixing of different cultural and economic groups. Design features like large front porches provide opportunities for community interaction. Older developments often provide naturally occurring workforce housing options. A number of these residences exist in Gaithersburg in the form of Cape Cod-type single-family homes and multi-story garden-style apartment buildings. For example, in the Chestnut Meme Historic District, residences vary in size from detached single-family homes measuring up to 3,000 square feet to duplexes as small as 675 square feet. Gaithersburg is proud of its diverse population, and some of the city's oldest neighborhoods reflect this mix of as people of differing ethnicities and incomes live in close proximity. Chapter 6, Objectives and Action Items, is where we lay out our tangible vision for preservation going forward. Each objective and action item relates to the 3 sustainability areas, again, economic, environmental, and social, and the 6 preservation program areas, advocacy, administration, identification, management, incentives and benefits, and education. For economic sustainability, to summarize, we want to maximize the financial advantages provided by historic properties by using them to spur investment and bring otherwise underutilized spaces into active use. We recognize that preservation has a positive effect on environmental sustainability, and we seek to do things such as minimize the amount of waste dumped in landfills, encourage the use of renewable energy, and plant appropriate tree, shrub, and plant species. For social sustainability, we want to continue to include historic resources in community planning efforts to celebrate the city's past and encourage buildings that evolve to suit modern needs. For advocacy, we want to work with other city staff to inventory trees, install historically themed public art, build websites, maintain city-owned properties, provide data through GIS, uphold code compliance, and build archives. For the administrative program area, we seek to keep our status as a certified local government and meet the requirements that come with it. We also want to offer assistance to property owners through new mediums and work with other city staff and boards. Under the identified program area, we want to be at the forefront of historic resource surveys and provide this information in a format that is readily available to the public. The management program area is broken into 2 slides. On this slide, we want to acknowledge that we want to avoid demolition when possible and then mitigate the effects when it is necessary. We also want to better organize our existing historic resources in terms of degrees of significance. Continuing the management program area, basically we want to provide clear guidelines to historic property owners when they seek to make changes. For the incentives and benefits program area, we want to continue to encourage the availability and use of tax credits and other financial incentives. We also want to continue to offer advice on best practices and generally be there to assist historic property owners. And finally, for education, we want to celebrate Gaithersburg's past through a variety of mediums. After the bibliography, we have 2 appendices. The first are current photos of the locally designated historic resources in the city, and the second is the previously mentioned report staff completed last year analyzing the financial effects of local designation on the city's 2 historic districts.
So from here, the next steps, we'll take in all this stuff received over the 60-day comment period, any comments received this evening, and we'll begin amending the draft. You may have noted MDP and MHT had some minor comments. We'll address those. I see Mr. Klein is in the audience. He submitted some comments, so we'll address those. And then we'll move forward, and we've recommended 2 records, one for the Planning Commission, one for the council, and hopefully if it's decided to follow those, policy discussion would occur in late April.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate the work you've put into this. I want to thank our Historic District Commission, whose members I see in the audience, and I'm sure that they've put in a tremendous amount of work here too. This is a public hearing, so I'd like to save most of our time for hearing from the public, but if anybody has any questions before we go to the public, please go right ahead. Not hearing any? Okay. Well, this is the time when the mayor and council and planning commission would love to hear from anybody on this topic. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. When your time is down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. When your time's up, it'll beep and turn red. We ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. Who would like to be our first speaker? Come on up. Jody Klein.
Good evening. My name is Jody Klein. I'm an attorney with the law firm in Miller Miller and Canby with offices at 200B Monroe Street in Rockville. And I wanted to speak briefly to you this evening about two properties. On page 45 of the element, I'm not sure where the page that is in your package, but I know it's 45 in the element. I wanted to talk to you about 539 Frederick Avenue. That's the red brick house beside the Duvall Funeral Home, and the house adjacent to that to the south, the white frame house at White Central Avenue, white frame house at Central Avenue. First of all, let me say, I applaud what the city's doing. What you're doing is a very good way to keep a protection over structures that may or may not be historic, but we don't know yet because we haven't done the research. And so rather than have something just get torn down willy-nilly, this is a good way to protect them until such time as the city makes a determination whether they're a historic resource that's valuable to maintain the character of the city. On the other hand, if you're the property owner, you kind of have this thing hanging over your head. You're not quite sure what you've got and everything. So when my clients got notice of the element being published in the public hearing, they called me up and said, what does this mean? Because they initially thought it meant they were going to be designated. And I explained what you're doing as you did in 2003 and said, we haven't had the time or the budget yet to analyze these properties, so let's just keep them in this state until such time as something happens to them or we get some money that we can devote some time and energy to find out what they really mean to the city. But my suggestion was, why don't we just take care of that for the city? Why don't we do, while you are putting these into the plan, go ahead and do the research? So we engaged a very well-respected historic preservation consultant, and using the Maryland Trust inventory form, we completed the forms for both of those properties. We're getting into all the facts that basically is the stuff that you would be looking at when you made a determination whether it should be designated historic or not. And as Mr. Robinson mentioned, we did submit those to the city, and I appreciate very much the city looked at them and called me back and said, there are probably some things in here that would be of interest to you, that are gaps that you didn't have in there that we think would probably, I don't want to say strengthen the case, but would give more information to the decision makers. So we're in the process of revising those analyses so that you can look at it. And the bottom line I'm trying to get to is I would like you to keep an open mind so that when we're all finished, when you get down to the end of this, we have provided you with the information that you would need ultimately when you have to make a decision whether that site's historic or not, so that it doesn't not necessarily have to go into this plan. So you're not kicking the can down the road. We're just basically letting us do the work now, and you decide whether it's valid or not to be designated. And I'll be back to talk to you when we get that work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have it? Please, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Dean Ventola, and I'm part of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. And I'd like to, the city had asked me just to say a couple of thoughts on the preservation element. And essentially, I just wanted to say, touch on our involvement, our support, and our recommendation. First is our involvement. This came before us, this document, in its early drafts, I believe 5 times. There were 3 times, I think, in 2015, October, November, December. And then we saw with the Planning Commission, I think about 2 years ago, almost this week, February 24th, if I'm not mistaken, where we all reviewed another draft of it. And then last September, I think September 27th, we saw a very developed version, but close to the final version now. And I can say that we have, as in the Historic District Commission, been very impressed with all the information and the detail and elements that are put into this document. Second, then, like I said, is our support. When we read through it in its final version, particularly, I would say the final version that we saw on September 27th, we were all really amazed on all of the information that was in there. And I saw it mostly as a teaching tool for both of the historic District Commission as well as a lot of the residents. And then lastly, I would like to recommend to everybody in the city to review it, to actually read through it as best they can, because it gives a lot of information on what the requirements are and what some of the benefits are. One of them in particular, and it's something that's important to me, is the tax credits that are available to historic structures that are needing repair, particularly on the exterior and I believe even in structural changes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd also commend it to anybody for the look at this city's history, because it's pretty interesting. Come on up.
Hi.
Hello?
I am the owner of the property in 106 North Summit.
Please state your name.
My name is Claudio Joseph.
Thank you.
And I have received in May 11, 2006, I received a correspondence related to a resolution by Mayor Katz that the property was denied being a historic property. So I felt that since there must be a memory in the city of Gaithersburg that would show that this property has been denied, and I have received again a paper saying that it is being sought as being a historic property. So I just wanted to make this point, because once it has been denied, I wouldn't expect that it will come back, or it is or it's not. So it is
Okay, do you have anything more? Because I'll ask staff to get back to you on this.
Okay,
Chris,
thank you very much.
Would you mind following up on that point?
Yeah, we're aware of the circumstances with his property. I believe he received a notification because he's in the Old Town area, which was mentioned in the document. Therefore, all property owners in
But
Old
not
Town
specific
received
to
it.
his.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. But if you have further questions, please contact our staff. They'll be glad to help you.
So let me ask a quick question, Chris, and make sure that everybody hears it. There's nothing in this amendment that actually designates any property as historic.
That is correct.
If it's adopted, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. But it does identify what we call resources that have historic value, either by their age, their architecture, the historical significance as to who might have designed it or who lived in it, and that it helps us understand a little bit about the history of Gaithersburg.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay,
And
but other than that, it doesn't designate anything as historic.
right, that's a whole separate process.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any other speakers on this topic? Come on up. Anybody else who'd like to speak, please line up.
Hi, I'm
We're
Ted
informed.
Bedell. I'm a property owner at 15 Park Avenue. I believe I'm shown as one of the other resources of note, or whatever it's called. So what I'm not clear about is that as a guidance document to you all, and what I think it says is this is supposed to get special consideration when something, what does that mean, really? And what does that mean to you? Because that's the guidance. So, you know, what I see is this beautiful kind of old town area kind of lagging behind all the rest of the other great developments that he mentioned there, and I'm wondering why. And I'm thinking some of it is people are concerned about being tagged with some of the requirements from the historic preservation and everything. So, but anyways, my main question is, what does that mean? Special consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a stab at it, and then Chris, correct me where I'm wrong. What it means is our staff and our Historic District Commission have sort of taken a look at all the properties in the city and noted where this these few may have some historic significance. They may have some historic significance to the city, which the city has prioritized, or not prioritized, but the city has made a point to do some preservation of various architectural remnants and places where people of importance, of historical note, have lived in the city. So all it's saying is that if we have one of these properties and someone wants to do something with it, we have to go and do some research first and make sure and see if it is a historic resource, and if the Historic District Commission determines it is and recommends to the mayor and council to adopt it as a historic, to designate it as a historic resource, then some different rules apply to what can be done with it. Chris,
Well
please
done.
correct me wrong.
Well done.
Okay, thank you.
So that is a significant.
Well, hold on. I'm going to give you one more minute, but you've had your time to speak.
I'm not over 3 minutes.
You're not over 3 minutes, but it's. Come on, Adam.
But
Come
that's
on.
a significant.
Come to the mic, please.
That's a significant process there for all those in the other resource, because they are now subject to unknowns, where if you're in a certain zoned area and you have certain allowances to build or develop per that, but now that may not apply because you got to look at it. So we're just it's kind of just an unknown. That is, people don't like unknowns. So.
We understand it's a different situation. Come on up.
So,
Please state your name and address for the record.
my name is Daniel Levy. I live at 12 George Street. I happen to own the property with my wife.
Okay.
To be clear, I think what we could clarify is, what's the difference in the potential, shall we say, risk of you guys saying we can't do something between this new designation and not having it? Because I'm not really interested in any way, shape, or form in having any further impediments to making any changes I want to my property. I think that's about the main objection here.
Okay. Chris, do you want to handle that?
Again, this document proposes no changes to anyone's land use changes to anyone's property. It's just a guiding policy document. Designation would be a separate process. So I did not hear the gentleman's address, but I believe he's Observatory Heights. It's a courtesy review area at the moment. It does have historic value. The state of Maryland 20 years ago said that it was eligible for designation, but it's not designated now. So if residents of that neighborhood wanted to pursue designation, we can certainly look at that, but if they do not, then we won't.
Do we have any other speakers? Please come on up. Just grab that mic and point it right to you. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, I'm Jean Gillis, and I live on Roland Road in the Deer Park area. And I noticed when I was looking through the document that there's a big distinction between identification and designation. And basically, they referred to the need to do a survey, and it sounded like it was a pretty detailed survey. And I guess my question, one of them is, basically, that's got to cost some money. Is that my responsibility as the homeowner? And if I need a new roof, do I have to, I know already there's a permit process in the city. And so I'm just very concerned about, is this just another permit that I have to go through in order to get a new roof or to, paint the house or, and then the other question that I had was about concerning the, encourage the planting of native and sustainable trees, shrubs, and plant species. Where do I go in the city of Gaithersburg to get that list? We have oak trees that are very old. They're getting near the end of their lifespan, and where do I go to find out about these potentially additional costs for doing these surveys, for getting additional permits, for getting a new roof, and for taking care of old trees that probably need to be replaced?
Great, thank you. Chris, do you want to address those?
Yes, there's a few different things to address there. Again, we're not proposing designation of Deer Park, so there would be no review for changing roofs, as she used as for an example. As for trees, we have a staff arborist. If she would like to call the planning department, we can provide her with direction on a sustainable tree species, native species to plant. And forgot the third question. Oh, surveys.
Cost of surveys.
Who pays for the survey?
Who pays for
That
the
wouldn't be any cost on her. Basically, an architectural survey requires exterior photographs taken from the right-of-way and then a description of the property and historic context.
All right, so the city.
Staff or...
City staff, yeah. Okay. Do we have any other speakers on this topic? Going once, going twice. Not seeing any,
So, Mayor,
okay.
I'm going to actually ask a question. I
Please.
might have lined up ahead of the testimony, but I think it's still relevant. So when I read through the policy, what I'm sensing is there's not a lot of change in policy over the 2003 master plan. There's some identification of some additional potential resources or some things identified as we move forward. And 10 plus years, 15 years later, things are going to start falling into the category that might be potential resources. So just kind of a quick editorial summary and sort of in the context of people wondering what this affects. Is there really a fundamental change in policy and preservation in the city, or does it really just amplify a lot of the strategic directions and policy we had in the previous
I think it's
element?
the latter, that we're building on the 2003 element. A lot of what was stated in that element is still relevant today. There's been a lot of changes in preservation since that was adopted in 2007, hence the need to update the element, but essentially we're building on that element going forward and expanding slightly.
And if I may, I think one of the other important aspects of this is we made a conscious decision to do this before land use, because unlike in previous years, a lot of the discussion that's going on this evening, and especially comments we've received from our residents in Deer Park and Observatory Heights and the like, is previously we would do land use recommendations and look at the parcel and give no consideration for what's existing on there. So right now, what we're trying to do through an economic development aspect is let's just make sure we know up front before we start making recommendations, or when a developer comes in to speak to us, that we're not just assuming there's nothing there and that it's bare earth. So that is somewhat different. And with the tact, especially the tremendous work Chris did, trying to discuss the importance of sustainability, building off our environment and sustainability element, which was approved like 2 years ago, to again reemphasize the connectivity between various elements, that these aren't standalone items that aren't impacted or don't complement another element. So that's subtly, a lot of the policies are the same as in 2003, but there's subtle changes to them to reemphasize these newer ideas.
And I think it might be helpful just as part of the introductory material to make clear how that translates kind of to the street. Is it something about affecting regulation, something about affecting permitting, something about affecting process? And if it's
they are in there obviously for the essence of time or the presentation.
right,
We didn't
but I
want to
mean
go
just
through every.
I think that's the.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's a gap, because I know it's in there in a longer form, but maybe the short summary just explains
Okay.
where that shift might be, if there's anything at all, if there's any move at all.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask a kind of lay out a scenario here so you can explain. I think that I'm not sure that everybody's satisfied with the answers that they've heard about some of this, particularly, for example, the 15 Park Avenue. I'm intimately familiar with that property, that street, and what's going on there. Suppose the current owner is approached by a developer that wants to put in a mixed use or multifamily property, and they bought the lot next door, which is vacant, and they want to do that. We've identified this as a potential historic resource. What's the process there that would allow that redevelopment to occur? Because it's likely that means demolition of that building, 15, and its accessory buildings as well. So what happens at that property as part of this process, since we've identified it as a historic resource?
Well, any building more than 50 years old in the city slated for demolition requires a review by the Historic District Commission, and they review in terms of architectural significance. So they have two options. Either they say this building is historically significant, and we want to hold off on demolition for 6 months to give us time to research the history on it and provide the background required to ultimately present to the mayor and city council, which has the final say.
the final say in what can happen to that?
Designation, correct.
Either it's going to be designated or it's going to be allowed to be
Demolish. And
right?
if the Historic District Commission at that time feels that the building doesn't have historic significance and warrant designation, they would say that we are not going to hold up this demolition permit.
Okay, and what if it's, instead of a demolition, it's a significant, the term you used earlier, Rob, was a significant alteration. What does that mean? Suppose they want to add a wing to the building.
Right along those lines. And I think to sort of explain how we envision this tool mainly for the development community, as we saw from Mr. Klein this evening, if a developer comes in and sees the economic worth of something, if they know potentially this is going to have some scrutiny, they can be proactive in their analysis and bring that in to help expedite the process, such as Mr. Klein was discussing for the Aschenbach properties. Again, all we wanted to do really, our intention, and was not to say you must designate these properties. Candidly, Chris and I both, for many of these, we don't even know if they're significant. The first cut was looking at the 50-year age, that litmus test right there. So we just wanted to make sure it was on the radar for the development community, for ourselves as we go through comprehensive planning exercises and the like. So it's not an afterthought that potentially puts the city in a bind, that if we, move towards something and somebody goes, well, your master plan said this, and we're going, but hold on, you have to go through this. You guys didn't say that. You're now denying me what you guys, what you guys had called for in the master plan. So this is why we want to make sure we're transparent, open, and upfront about what will be considered.
Okay.
Anyone else with questions? Otherwise, staff recommendations.
Right, well, it says here, and actually staff said this earlier, that they recommend the Planning Commission record close on Friday, April 6, 2018 at 5 p.m. That's 44 days, with an anticipated Planning Commission recommendation on April 18, 2018. Is there a motion from the commissioners, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
All right, and again, for those in the audience and those watching, the records will stay open for quite some time, so you have some time. We will consider your written comments just the same as any oral testimony. So the recommendation is for the mayor and council to close the record at 5 p.m. on Friday, April 27th, 2018, which is 65 days from now, with anticipated policy discussion on May 21st. What's the pleasure?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is policy discussions. And we're going to invite Diane to the table. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have our policy discussion on energy benchmarking, and to lead us in this discussion, we have Diane Back from our staff and Lindsay Shaw from Montgomery County. Welcome, ladies, please.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to move through somewhat quickly. I have a PowerPoint that you've seen basically all of these slides during the previous public hearing. So I'm going to point out any substantive changes that have occurred, and then I'm of course available, as is Ms. Shaw, to answer any questions. So moving forward, in terms of why do we benchmark, we're looking to reduce energy consumption and costs. I recently came across a very apt quote. Energy efficiency is the perfect alignment of priorities. A business's need to reduce costs, a city's desire to increase investment in its building stock to grow jobs in the economy, And it also has a dual focus on reducing carbon emissions and increasing cost savings. That's from a staff person with the Institute of Market Transformation. Moving forward, really in terms of changes, the public comment time period closed. We did not receive any public comment. What else can I answer? One question during the previous time I was before you at the public hearing. The only nonprofit entity that this would apply to within the city, looking at the county's records, is Habitat for Humanity, and they will be apprised of the passage of the ordinance, and then they will receive, as will all of the for-profit and other type entities, the information that the county submits to all of the folks that are required to both track their energy consumption and then meet the transparency requirements. So I have the applicability requirements here before me. In terms of anything else, I will point out that the copy, I believe, of the attachment of the actual ordinance before you should be redlined with a different effective date because we don't want the ordinance to fall into any type of gray time period. Rather than have the ordinance become effective on the 12th day of March, it should be the 31st day of December 2018. That way it will fall entirely out of the current cycle of due date submittal, which would be June 1st, 2018. Rather, it would apply for June 1st, 2019, thereby giving folks the entire time period to submit the data. Let's see. Happy to bring up any of the slides that you had seen before. If there are any questions about the requirements, exemptions and waivers, we've covered everything previously. So,
Yeah.
like I said, feel free to ask away.
Yeah, we appreciate all you guys have done to help lead us through this. I think it makes great sense for us to jump in on this program. And I'm looking forward to seeing what our colleagues on the council have to say here. Who'd like to go first? Neil?
Well, just to repeat what I said last time we went through this, we had a deep discussion about this policy at the Economic Development Committee, where, to my surprise, the development and real estate community was all for this and saw it as you pointed out on that previous slide, as a cost savings as well as an energy savings, and something that was beneficial to building owners and not seen as any kind of a burden. So it's a win-win all around. So it seems like a great policy to go forward with.
Rob?
Seems like a no-brainer. Just wanted to recognize the Environmental Affairs Committee and their work on this, bringing it from the start line, and tonight I hope that we bring it across as a council across the finish line.
As you see, he's doing his best for the environment right now with that mask. Mike?
Yeah, I think I made my support for this pretty clear. I think it's for the benefit of the property owners as well as the public in the long run. And it's certainly in line with our priorities in terms of sustainability, energy efficiency, and addressing this whole issue of carbon emissions and reducing the potential that will add to our issues related to climate change.
Lorianne?
Thank you, Mayor. So I would agree with my colleagues. This is a step in the right direction. I'm curious to see what the benchmark data will provide so that we can start, making some ambitious goals towards lower carbon emissions over the years. So I'm excited to see what comes of these buildings and how we can make it even better in the city. Thank you.
Excellent. So
where's the change in the? You said that the text was going to be redlined somewhere?
Well, it's just with the effective date. That's the
date.
only change. Not sure if Ms. Stokes, clerk, would have. They have that before them.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's not reflected in the document that I see here, so that's why I've asked. So, assuming that change and correction's been made, I'll move them.
I'll second.
Okay, ordinance has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the help from the county on this.
Of course.
Next, we have ordinances, resolutions, regulations, and Sean Stevens. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The resolution before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract to purchase 11 city fleet vehicles. 9 of these vehicles will be police vehicles and are comprised of 7 2018 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicles, and 2 will be 2018 Chevrolet Tahoe Police Pursuit vehicles. The 2 remaining vehicles are 2018 Ford Escapes and will be for the Department of Public Works' Engineering and Stormwater Management divisions respectively. The Department of Public Works would like to utilize the State of Maryland contract, which was awarded on September 29, 2017. This contract was competitively bid by the State of Maryland and satisfies all requirements of the city's procurement policy. These 11 units were approved as part of the city's FY18 operating budgets and asset replacement fund. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Sean. Any questions?
Are any of the vehicles, particularly those for public works or stormwater management, are any of those hybrids or low emission vehicles?
They are Ford Escapes and they are
Flex fuel?
They're flex fuel. They're a little bit of both.
Okay. Are hybrids available in the state contract?
Not on the state contract.
Okay. That's it.
Oh,
You just
okay.
answered my question. That's
Okay,
fine.
well, you want to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution if no one else has any questions.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 4-0.
Just
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
A
Sean.
follow-up question on Mike's question is, how do we start considering hybrid or electric vehicles if we're gonna be utilizing just the state contracts as our?
Mark, do you want to come? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Or it could be a
You can
Tony
get back
Black.
to us.
That's okay, and that's really, why I'm here also. We have had some, electric vehicles in the past, and the infrastructure wasn't there. As the infrastructure gets better, we're actually gonna put a charging station in at Public Works, so we are moving forward for doing some of that. One thing we are also looking at is using E85, so which is ethanol. So when we get our tanks rebuilt in the next 2 years, we'll be able to use that also, which will move us further away from fossil fuels.
And we do have some, the
Yeah.
vehicles assigned to the city manager's office are all hybrids.
Well, I think it's great if we can increase those, especially if the requirements of the vehicle are such that we could use hybrids, that they're not going to be carrying enormous loads or tonnage or anything like that. But
Right,
if it's not part of the state contract, then we should probably do something about seeing
Yes,
if
and we can
get
look,
that done.
we could look into other contracts. The
Yeah.
state is actually starting to go more that way also.
Yeah.
So in the future out years, I think you're gonna see many more of these vehicles becoming available, for the municipal market.
And I know this is, it might be a touchy topic for the chief and the force, but there are a number of hybrid police vehicles now as well that are on the market. So I don't know if that's going to be part of the state contract. But it would be interesting to look at that over a couple of years and see whether those are beginning to show up in various places and how effective they are.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate it,
welcome.
Mark. Okay, next, we're going to move on to public comments. It's the time the mayor and council would like to hear from you to talk about any topic you'd like. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. State your name and address and or neighborhood for the record. Who'd like to be our first speaker? Come on up. Anybody else who would like to speak, please feel free to line up behind this gentleman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mark Rive. I'm a volunteer and president of the Montgomery County Agricultural Fair, and I'm a full-time employee of Gaithersburg Equipment Company. I dedicate much of my life to serving the city of Gaithersburg, and tonight I'd like to ask you to consider carefully implications of changes to city code concerning events with traveling animal exhibits. Now I'm gonna go off topic or go off script here just for a second. And anybody here that's a volunteer from Montgomery County Fair, could you put your hand up? And I know you already announced earlier that we're going to postpone this to a later date, and we'll definitely, take this up in more detail then. But I just wanted to point that out that, there's a lot of us that care truly about this topic, and we really appreciate the time to speak publicly. For many years, animals such as tigers, bears, snake, camels have been on display with our livestock animals at the Montgomery County Fair. Off-season, we host several traveling circuses that feature exotic animals. Never once has there been a violation of animal care regulations or charge of abuse. I witness on a regular basis the love and care these traveling exhibitors have for their animals. They treat their animals with the same attention and affection we treat our livestock and our pets. There is no animal abuse problem with these traveling animals, not in the city of Gaithersburg, not Montgomery County. Changes to the city code to ban the exhibit of these animals within the city of Gaithersburg would endanger the educational mission of the Montgomery County Fair. I'm going to go off script a little bit too. Having live animals, whether it's exotic animals or the livestock there, is just a wonderful teaching experience. When you have children go by the animals, they get excited, and they're such a tool to educate. And really, I think this is my biggest point I want to say, and that is changes to the city code to ban the exhibit of these animals within the city of Gaithersburg would endanger the educational mission of Montgomery County Fair. Our fairgrounds provide unique and interesting animal exhibits for the citizens of our community cannot visit nearby anywhere else. Furthermore, those of us who dedicate our life to the local agricultural community, fear of promoting these traveling animals would soon eliminate all animal exhibits at our fairgrounds. HSUS has said that their ultimate goal is to end animal agriculture. Because there's no history of animal abuse in the city for traveling animals, because there is no history of abuse in the city by the traveling animals exhibitors, and to protect the future of our fair, we oppose changes to city code promoted by Humane Society of the United States.
Thank you. You're welcome to submit the rest in writing. We will have there will be other opportunities as well to present this testimony.
I will indeed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And thank all of you, all of the volunteers who've come from the agricultural fair. We're glad to hear from whoever wants to testify about this and any other topic. Marty, come on up.
I'm Marty Sverchek. I'm the Executive Director at the Montgomery County Agricultural Fair. For many years, we've contracted with various exhibitors and shows, like Mark has brought out, to bring performance animals to the fair. All of these shows carried required certifications and would be banned if the changes to Chapter 4 are enacted. We've been in the animal business for 70 years, and we firmly believe in humane treatment of animals. How many of our volunteers are here again? Humane treatment. This is what we're all about. We have over 10,000 animals at our fair every year, and we teach hundreds of people and hundreds of 4-H members about humane treatment. We're hoping that you will not make this change to Chapter 4. You'll look at the possibilities of putting into the Chapter 4 the pieces that we propose which would regulate performance animals, do it in a safe and humane manner, meeting the codes of Gaithersburg, the codes of the Animal Welfare Act, and the codes of the county and the state that we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, as I said, we've deferred to March 5th, which could potentially be an introduction, right, Lynn?
It is just for staff guidance at that
It's just
point.
for staff guidance.
Yes.
So thered be staff guidance, and then there'd be an introduction,
Correct.
and then there'd be public hearing.
If that's the guidance.
If that's the guidance, exactly. Okay. So just
You can certainly let us know what you think coming up to that, or
If
at
you-
the session.
And I'll note, if you can make it on March 5th to this meeting, great. And if not, our meetings are broadcast on YouTube and available thereafter on YouTube, so you can keep an eye on us, and we're glad to hear from you anytime. Okay, now we'll move on to from the mayor and council, and we're going to start with Councilmember Sales.
Good evening, So it's been quite a busy week. Well, before I begin on what's been going on, I did want to again thank Chief Shroka for recognizing the officers who were promoted and who continue to do great work and make Gaithersburg look even better because of their responsible public safety work. I specifically want to call out Officer Story, who was awarded Officer of the Year, and again thank him for the great work that he's done to have such high interactions with the public, to not have any incidents, no complaints. It's highly commendable in this day and age, and so I just want to thank our chief for his leadership efforts. And Officer Martinez, congratulations on your promotion. I remember before joining the council, I asked the chief if he could arrange a ride-along for me, and he arranged it with Officer Martinez. So it's good to see that we are both being promoted in the city of Gaithersburg, and I hope he continues to do great things. I have also gone to 2 forums to recognize for our next county executive and for our District 3 representative. The seat's currently held by former Mayor Katz, so I just want to remind everyone to do their due diligence. This is a mid-year election, and the date is June 26th, so please explore boundary lines and continue to stay on top of who's running and which elections are up this year. It's a very important election year. What else? There was a meet and confer event with a county executive elected that we attended last week. A few of the council members, Councilmember Spiegel was there and presented county executive elected with an award, seeing that this is his last term as our county executive. And they also went around and spoke with all the different municipalities across Montgomery County and just talked about the economic incentives and all the different ways that the county continues to support the municipalities around the county. And so that information is also available online if you want to get additional information. Congratulations to everyone who attended the Lunar New Year celebration. I wasn't able to make it, but I heard it was well attended and there was a great turnout. I did make it to Annapolis, though, for the Maryland Legislative Asian American and Pacific Islander Caucus Community Night. And they also celebrated Lunar New Year with the First Lady, Umi Hogan. So that was a great event, and we also got to participate with Rob Wu, who just had to leave us, and got to present one of our residents with a proclamation. So that was a special night, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the council.
Thank you, Lorianne. Move on to Mike.
Great. Yeah, I do want to thank the Chinese Culture and Community Service Center for, again, holding their Lunar New Year celebration at Lake Forest. It was it seems every year the crowd gets larger. So, and it was nice to have the governor and the First Lady of Maryland there as well. And as the governor made note of, the First Lady's one of her daughters lives in Gaithersburg, so it's always a nice time for them to visit Gaithersburg, and it was a great ceremony. Always entertaining. It's a great partnership we've had with the CCACC for a long time. Also want to congratulate our officers who were promoted and recognized today. I want to express my condolences to the staff at the dwelling place and to anyone who's worked with Miriam, who had the opportunity to work with Miriam Gandel during her tenure with the organization. It was just shocking news to me today to hear that. So she was a great, the dwelling place has always been a great partner for the city. It's a nonprofit that I've worked with and supported closely. So it's a big loss. Miriam actually retired last year. And I don't know if it had anything to do with her death today. But anyway. And then today I attended, or I was asked to participate in a panel with the National League of Cities for congressional staff to introduce and go over the Rebuild and Reimagine America's Infrastructure panel, in which I was invited to talk about how the city is dealing with increasing and improving our broadband networks, and both in terms of accessibility, affordability, and modernization. The other panelist was from the city of Boston, so they had a nice contrast there to see a city of over 1 million and how they do it in the city like Gaithersburg, and apparently we do things in a very similar fashion. I think what we emphasized in our presentation is it's important to work with the industry. It's important to be able to increase access and affordability and modernize our broadband infrastructure. Even with small cells, I think it's important also for the industry to take a bigger role in educating the public about the necessity of small cell distribution, but also to explain how they're going to make it so that it doesn't reduce the impact on our neighborhoods, whether it's a traditional suburban neighborhood, or new urbanist neighborhood, or Old Town and the historic district. Those things are going to have an impact. Small cell is a kind of a strange name for something that's not actually very small. It's about some of those things are about the size of the podium. So anyway, so let me real quickly go over what the NLC plan on rebuilding and reimagining American infrastructure. It has to do with water, broadband, workforce, and transportation. So, our partners in this are state and county governments, but also the federal government. So the NLC is spending a lot of time lobbying on the Hill. All of these things have an impact on economic development and growth of cities and the quality of life. So it's important that I think that this is a great agenda for cities of any size, but especially for cities in Maryland. So I hope that I hope we can make some progress with that in Congress. And that's it.
Thank you, Mike. Neil.
So I'll try to keep it brief. First of all, hopefully everybody had a great Valentine's Day. I know mine was fun, and hopefully I'll shed some of the weight after all that candy. And I also really want to call out to the CCACC. I was also at the Lunar New Year event at Lake Forest Mall. It's always great. As Mike said, it gets bigger every year. Really quite entertaining, and great to see a great community come out and join hands in celebration together. So I've talked at previous meetings about the traffic issue on Route 28 near Quince Orchard High School. Just want to report that there is a citizen group meeting with the school and meeting with state officials to try to see what else can be done. As I've reported previously, the State Highway Administration has agreed to put up a new U-turn sign, which will maybe push the problem around and move it a little farther from the school, but hopefully there's some longer-term solutions that can prevent anything terrible from happening in the traffic outside of our local high school. And also to piggyback on what Lorianne said, when you get involved in an elected office, you meet a lot of elected officials. This year is a very major election year for governor, Congress, and especially at the county level, where there are many people running for every open seat. There are something like close to 30 people running for the 4 at-large seats, half a dozen for most of the other seats, including county executives. So I'm starting to narrow my list from 28 down to a smaller number, and I'm not going to name any names because it's not appropriate for me to do from the dais, but hopefully you'll be paying close attention. And this is a watershed year. There are a number of open seats thanks to term limits and people running for other offices at every level. And it's very important that we get some good, hardworking people in there who will help move us all forward. That's it for me tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Just a quick note, I want to wish my good friend Mike Sesma a happy birthday. It was his birthday on Saturday, right?
Sunday.
I think he's being declared historic this year, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I was
He's
going to
past that
comment
point.
that in a year, my home in West Riding will be eligible for historic designation. So I'm, and sometimes that designation is based on who has lived in that home. So maybe it's appropriate to request that.
All right. Well, it would be a first, I think, someone saying, please, just designate my home. But anyway, it's also Mike's wife's, Joni's, birthday today. So happy birthday to the Sesmas. And next week, we have a planning retreat. As opposed to a work session or a meeting here on Monday, we will have a planning retreat at the Casey Community Center. It starts at 6 p.m. on Monday, February 26th. This retreat is entirely open to the public, but there will not be public comments taken during the session. Again, if you come and have anything you'd like to tell us, you're welcome to submit those comments in writing. We'll definitely consider them. But so next week, the 26th, is the retreat, and then the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council is Monday, March 5th, 7:30 p.m. right here. We will go on to From the City Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple items. As you know, we completed the survey of residents of Ottoman Square relative to the parking issue on Victory Farm, and Neighborhood Services staff is compiling the data. We got a good response, I think between 60 and 70 responses, I believe. And I'll be provided a breakdown and what the community has decided they'd like you to do shortly from Neighborhood Services.
Thank you. That'll be helpful.
It will. Just going through the exercise was really helpful, and it's something we may be able to replicate in other areas too.
Oh, good.
And also, as Lorianne mentioned, we were happy to meet with Ike and his staff. It's sad to see him go. Prior to his remarks, we did get a finance update about the county. A little gloomy, but it's pretty much always that way.
It is. In fact, I would just say I've gone to that meeting for many, many years, and the outlook is always gloomy at that meeting. Always. Doesn't always end up being as gloomy.
No, it often doesn't. And ours the same. The last few meetings I've been saying we've really been looking into revenues. I'm happy to report we have been able to close the gap a little bit. Not completely. Real property we believe we'll get back to last year's levels. Actually, they'll be so close to last year's levels that we probably will not need to have the constant yield hearing, which means you've got to be almost exactly the same. And given the movement in residential versus commercial, there was a lot of movement on both sides. It's remarkable that it ended up pretty much where it was before.
Yeah.
But commercial is subject to very normal cycle of appeals. So it's possible that commercial could go back down a little bit later. We're still looking at a couple $1 million gap based on this year's revenues, but we're well prepared, as I've said before, and we're into developing the expenditure budgets. You will get a little more detailed finance presentation at the retreat next week before we go into the strategic plan.
Great.
And that's it.
Thank you. We'll move on to economic development, and we'll thank Tom and we'll thank all staff for staying with us. Usually you're earlier in the agenda, Tom, so we appreciate it.
Ever so slightly, but my pleasure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I just have one item tonight. In order to monitor the health of the county's hotel market, our friends at Visit Montgomery contract annually with a company called STR, which does track hotel supply and demand around the county, and provides clients with data benchmarking, analytics, and marketplace insights. It's pretty expensive work to get done, and we're happy that Visit Montgomery regularly shares this data with us at no cost. I'm here tonight to share some of the 2017 year-end numbers in Gaithersburg, the county, and surrounding submarkets. Here in Gaithersburg, not gloomy at all. SDR does track data at all of Gaithersburg's 13 hotels. There were 14. Hyatt House has now closed its doors. We have a total of about 2,100 rooms open in the city currently. By year's end, the city averaged an occupancy rate of 70.4%, up slightly, but from 69.9% a year prior. The industry considers optimal occupancy to be somewhere between 70 and 80%, depending on the service level of the hotel. National average is just below 66%. Rockville, our closest neighbor, is 68%, lowest in the region, just above the county average of 68.5%. The highest rate of occupancy in the county continued to be in Bethesda, 73%, and the highest in the region was Arlington at 77%. Hotel average daily rate, ADR, another critical component of hotel profitability, was also up in Gaithersburg in 2017, rising to about $113 a night from $111 the prior year. ADR is the average rental income per paid occupied room, and it's just as critical to a hotel's success as is occupancy. As in years past, the city's ADR is the lowest in the county, meaning the most affordable, though close to Rockville's $115 average. Further down county you go, no surprise, the more expensive it gets. Silver Spring is averaging $135 a night, and Bethesda now is almost $170, the highest in the region, actually. In short, here in Gaithersburg, occupancy is up, ADR is up, and revenue per available room is up, all good indicators for sure. But as we continue to learn, it is a very competitive industry, and any discussions about additional hotel development in the city should consider impacts on additional capacity on existing inventory. Thanks again to our friends at Visit Montgomery for sharing this data and their continuing efforts to market and support the local hotel market.
Very interesting. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
From the city attorney.
Nothing further this evening.
Anything from any other staff? Not seeing anything. Okay, as mentioned, next week, please join us at our planning retreat at the Casey Community Center, 6 p.m. on Monday. The next regular session of the Mayor and Council is Monday, March 5th. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.